Each mind-body-spirit complex evolves through cycles of various densities. After the seventh density has been well entered, the mind-body-spirit complex becomes so totally a mind-body-spirit complex totality that it begins to gather spiritual mass and approach the octave density. Thus, the looking backwards is finished at that point. This is a dimension in which time does not have sway. In this dimension, the mind-body-spirit in its eternal dance of the present may be seen in totality and before the mind-body-spirit complex, which then becomes a part of the social memory complex, is willingly absorbed into the allness of the one creator. The entity knows itself in its totality. This mind-body-spirit complex totality functions, shall we say, as a resource for what we perhaps would call the higher self. The higher self, in turn, is a resource for examining the distillations of third-density experience and programming further experience. This is also true of densities 4, 5, and 6, with the mind-body-spirit complex totality coming into consciousness in the course of seventh density. The higher self is a manifestation given to the late sixth density mind-body-spirit complex as a gift from its future selfness. The mid-seventh density's last action, before turning towards the allness of the Creator and gaining spiritual mass, is to give this resource to the sixth density self, moving in the stream of time. This self, the mind-body-spirit complex of late sixth density, going into the seventh, has then the honor duty of using both the experiences of its total living bank, or memory of experienced thoughts and actions, and using the resource of the mind-body-spirit complex totality left behind as a type of infinitely complex thought form. In this way, you may see yourself, your higher self or oversoul, and your mind-body-spirit complex totality as 3 points in a circle. The only distinction is that of our time-space continuum. All are the same being. Your mind-body-spirit totality carefully guards information of your past incarnations, so that your present space-time experiences will be undiluted. Only harmless material for your beingness may be accessible in various ways. In time of harvest, the mind-body-spirit complex totality, or higher self of an entity, is part of the first level of guardians watching over harvest. In case the harvested entity needs to move to another planetary influence, the first step of the mind-body-spirit totality is to place its mind-body-spirit complex distortion in the proper place of love-light. This is done to ensure proper healing of the complex and eventual attunement with the totality beingness complex. This takes a very variable length of our time-space. At this time, the harvested mind-body-spirit totality evaluates the density needs of its beingness and chooses the more appropriate, new environment for either a repetition of the cycle or a moving forward into the next cycle. The mind-body-spirit totality is one with the Creator. There is no time-space distortion. Therefore, in order to move to the new environment, it is a matter of thinking the proper locus in the infinite array of time spaces. The higher self aspect is aware of the lessons learned through the sixth density and exists with full understanding of the accumulation of experiences of the entity, aids the entity in achieving healing of the experiences which have not been learned properly, and assists in further life experience programming, as we may call it. The progress rate is fairly well understood. The choices which must be made to achieve the higher self as it is are in the provenance of the mind-body-spirit complex itself. The mind-body-spirit complex totality is that which may be called upon by the higher self aspect, just as the mind-body-spirit complex calls upon the higher self. In the one case, we have a structured situation within the space-time continuum, with the higher self having available to it the totality of experiences which have been collected by an entity, and a very firm grasp of the lessons to be learned in this density. The mind-body-spirit complex totality is as the shifting sands and is in some part a collection of parallel developments of the same entity. This information is made available to the higher self aspect. This aspect may then use these projected probability-possibility vortices in order to better aid in future life programming. The higher self does not manipulate its past selves. It protects when possible and guides when asked, but the force of free will is paramount. The seeming contradictions of determinism and free will melt when it is accepted that there is such a thing as true simultaneity. In time-space, which is precisely as much of yourself as is space-time, all times are simultaneous, just as in our geography, our cities and villages are all functioning, bustling, and alive, with entities going about their business at once. So it is in time-space with the self. The higher self is the end result of all the development experienced by the mind-body-spirit complex to that point. Thus, the higher self is like the map, in which the destination is known. The roads are very well known, these roads being designed by intelligent infinity working through intelligent energy. However, the higher self aspect can program, only for the lessons and certain predisposing limitations, if it wishes. The remainder is completely the free choice of each entity. There is the perfect balance between the known and the unknown. Each entity has several beings upon which to call for inner support. Any of these may be taken by an entity to be the mind-body-spirit complex totality. However, this is not the case. The mind-body-spirit complex totality is a nebulous collection of all that may occur, held in understanding. The higher self itself is a projection or manifestation of mind-body-spirit complex totality, which then may communicate with the mind-body-spirit during the discarnate part of a cycle of rebirth, or during the incarnation may communicate if the proper pathways or channels are opened through the roots of mind. There are no negative beings which have attained the negative Oversoul manifestation, which is the honor duty of the mind-body-spirit complex of late sixth density, as we would term it in our time measurements. These negatively oriented mind-body-spirit complexes have a difficulty, which to our knowledge has never been overcome, for after fifth density graduation, wisdom is available, but must be matched with an equal amount of love. This love light is very, very difficult to achieve in unity when following the negative path, and during the earlier part of the sixth density, society complexes of the negative orientation will choose to release the potential and leap into the sixth density positive. Therefore, the Oversoul which makes its understanding available to all who are ready for such aid is towards the positive. However, the free will of the individual is paramount, and any guidance given by the higher self may be seen in either the positive or negative polarity, depending upon the choice of a mind-body-spirit complex. Each entity has its totality, and at the point at which a planetary entity becomes a social memory complex, the totality of this union of entities also has its Oversoul and its social memory complex totality as resource. Thus, each social memory complex has an Oversoul of a type which is difficult to describe in words. As always, the sum, spiritually speaking, is greater than the sum of its parts, so that the Oversoul of a social memory complex is not the sum of the Oversouls of its member entities, but operates upon the way of what we prefer to call doubling.